Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. I thought I would do a really nice treat for all of you aliens UFO fans out there. Those of you that are longtime viewers or maybe some newer ones here as well. Those of you that keep asking for more videos, I thought I would do this. So you've seen some of my past playlists when it comes to documenting some chapters associated with cryptids and monsters books. I've done this now twice with two other playlists, two other books. Really good stuff. It's a great way to showcase these encounters that people have had on an individual basis, and then chapter by chapter showcase them per video, and then post my own thoughts and comments on there too. Well, I decided to shift parameters to actually go into the world of aliens, UFOs. I wanted to go ahead and find a book that is along the same type of material. Like, in other words, chapters dedicated to different type of encounters, and then again give my thoughts and opinions on those too. So that way I'll get to have a good plethora of videos to showcase on the aliens UFO side. And in this case, I found a book that looked very, very fascinating. I'll include the link for it below in case you haven't seen it just yet. You'll be able to read the book for free as well. And I'm going to also post a link for every single one of these videos dedicated to this book. It's called UFO Sightings, and it's done by an author by the name of Alan Baker. It looks like this book came out about 25 years or so ago, and reading some of the information linked to it, it looks really good. In fact, he dedicated it into three different parts. First part is one showcasing close encounters of the first, second, third, and fourth kind. And I was looking at those chapters. They each have individual encounters too. And then part two starts going into some of the evidence, some of the reactions, some of the military type of responses, and so on. That'll be part two. And then finally part three, it looks like he gives his own opinions when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. But fascinating stuff. I thought this would be a really great entry for everyone here. And so without further ado, I'm going to do part one, in this case, of this playlist. This one is going to be the introduction. So not necessarily chapter one just yet, but instead it's the introduction that the author gives, Alan Baker. So that way he talks about essentially what the book is going to entail, and then some previews towards other things as well. Really good stuff. I'd love to see what your thoughts are as well with regards to this playlist. And then let me know if you want me to continue this aliens UFO cycle as well. I still will interject some of the other type of regular videos that I do on aliens UFOs, like when I document individual cases. But I thought this would be a really, really fun stuff to try out. So without further ado, this is Introduction for UFO Sightings by Alan Baker, and here's what he states. Ever since that fateful day, 24th of June 1947, when American pilot Kenneth Arnold made the first modern UFO sighting over Mount Rainier in Washington state, people from every walk of life across the world have been fascinated by the idea that we are the target of scrutiny by beings from elsewhere in the universe. Although the numerous sightings that followed Arnold's case gave rise to initial speculations that the strange objects were secret weapons developed by the United States, the Soviet Union, or both, this suggestion rapidly gave way to what has become to be known as the extraterrestrial hypothesis, ETH, which holds that the flying saucers were and are piloted spacecraft from other planets. While many distinguished and responsible people have supported this contention, it has resulted in an unfortunate misapprehension that has been reinforced by sensation-hungry journalists throughout the decades since the late 1940s. This grave misapprehension is that UFOs are, by definition, alien spacecraft. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is essential to remember that the acronym UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object, with the emphasis on unidentified. There is absolutely no doubt that UFOs exist. Any object seen in the sky that resists identification, even for just a few moments, is a UFO. In approximately 90% of cases, these objects become IFOs, identified flying objects, either at the time of the sighting or through subsequent investigation. In the vast majority of UFO sightings, it sooner or later becomes apparent that what the witness actually saw was a man-made aircraft viewed at an unusual angle, or a flock of birds whose bodies were reflecting light from the ground, or astronomical phenomena such as meteorites, stars, and planets. In the latter case, a planet can often be given the illusion of movement if viewed through passing clouds. It is remarkably easy for untrained observers to be misled by what they see in the skies, as I can confirm from my own experience. In 1994, I was living in Reading, England, where I had attended the university. At about 8 o'clock one Saturday evening, I left my house to visit some friends and immediately noticed something very strange in the sky directly overhead. As is often the case in England, the sky was completely overcast, with a thick blanket of cloud dimly illuminated by the street lamps. In sudden confusion, I watched as a diffuse light flitted through the skies, moving at what seemed like incredible speed, stopping and starting almost instantaneously, at one moment directly overhead, at the next above houses several streets away. As I stopped dead in my tracks and gazed into the sky, it seemed to me that the light was coming from something that was obscured by the heavy clouds. As might be expected with anyone interested in UFOs, I immediately wondered if this might be the night I would finally see one. And I have to admit, I also felt a sudden twinge of fear. What if the abduction reports were true? I was all alone in the street. Would I be next? These rather unsettling speculations were short-lived, however. It quickly occurred to me that there might be a more down-to-earth explanation for what I was seeing. The way the light was flitting about put me in the mind of a searchlight being playing upon the underside of the cloud cover. Assuming that this was the answer, I made my way to my friend's house and told them what I had seen. They told me that a spotlight had recently been fitted to the roof of the Students' Union building on the university campus and was switched on every Saturday night. I thought no more about the matter until several months later when I read the March-April 1995 issue of Quest International's UFO magazine, which carried a report from the Reading Evening Post of 29 November 1994. The report stated that hundreds of people around Reading had witnessed strange, disc-shaped lights in the sky. One person who called the paper said she had run home in fear, thinking Martians were about to land, while another said, "I rushed in and told my husband. What he said back to me was unrepeatable, but at the time we just didn't know what it was." The Post, of course, provided the correct explanation for the lights, which had indeed been caused by the large spotlight on the Students' Union's roof. I mention this as a cautionary tale against making rash assumptions when spotting something unusual in the sky. The light I saw was a UFO until I figured out what it actually was. And yet, like many other people in Reading who saw it, I had, albeit briefly, entertained the notion that it was an alien spacecraft. Such is the power of the cultural icon the UFO has become. And from now on, things can only get more confusing as our own aerospace technology improves, resulting in aircraft that display many of the attributes of alleged UFOs. This is especially true of military technology. It is generally conceded that developments in this field occur at least a decade before the public is allowed to know of them. A case in point is the F-117A Nighthawk covert strike aircraft. A full-scale mock-up of this remarkable machine was constructed at the Lockheed Corporation's Advanced Projects Factory, the Skunk Works, in Burbank, California in 1979, nearly 10 years before it was fully revealed to the public. It follows that research and development work began earlier than that. Photographs released a few years ago show a test prototype of the F-117A that was constructed in 1975. If we assume that developments in aerospace technology proceed approximately 15 years ahead of what is actually acknowledged to exist, we are led to the inescapable conclusion that what we might expect to see around the year 2015 is being developed right now. We can therefore be forgiven for asking whether some UFO sightings in the late 1970s and 80s were of stealth-type aircraft. Likewise, with the famous Belgian UFO wave of 1989 to 90, in which approximately 2,000 witnesses described overflights by a large triangular object. This wave, which eventually extended throughout much of Europe, ranks at one of the most intriguing and impressive in the history of ufology, not least because the object or objects was reported by the Belgian police and Air Force, the latter subsequently releasing its radar tracking tapes for public scrutiny via the media. According to Colonel Wilfred de Brounzer, Chief of Operations for the Belgian Air Office or Air Force, this object's tracks could not possibly have been conventional aircraft, nor could they have been misidentifications of the B-2 stealth bomber or the F-117A Nighthawk. Such was their speed and maneuverability. When two Belgian Air Force F-16s were scrambled to intercept one such object, they were vastly outperformed by the UFO, which was capable of descending from 10,000 to 500 feet in less than 5 seconds. As with many UFOs, these bizarre flying triangles displayed inertial characteristics that would have provided instant fatality to any human pilot. What should we conclude from this? That the pilots were not in fact human, or would it be more prudent to suggest that there were no pilots? It may come as a surprise to some that not all military aircraft are piloted. Those that aren't are known as RPVs, remotely piloted vehicles, and UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, and are much faster and more maneuverable than piloted aircraft. RPVs and UAVs have been used successfully in reconnaissance missions in many contexts, most recently in the Gulf War, and it is extremely likely that they account for a significant percentage of UFO sightings by people who are unaware of their existence and capabilities. However, it is surely unlikely that such machines would fool highly trained fighter pilots of the Belgian or any other air force into thinking they were dealing with something beyond conventional explanation. The fantastic flight characteristics of these UFOs included the ability to hover in absolute silence, as testified by ground witnesses. Surely then this must imply an extraterrestrial origin, not necessarily. Several years ago, it was reported in the media that scientists in Japan were investigating the apparently extremely peculiar properties of spinning disks which, when rotated at very high speeds, thousands of revolutions per minute, appeared to shed their mass. To be sure, this mass loss was tiny, requiring sensitive instruments to record it. One researcher stated that in order to lose all of its mass, this would have to be spun at several hundred million revolutions per minute. Yet apparently, the mass loss was real and repeatable in the laboratory. Bearing in mind that military technology is at least 10 to 15 years ahead of what the public is allowed to see, as mentioned earlier, would it not be reasonable to speculate that a major breakthrough in the struggle against gravity may already have been achieved and been put into practice in some form of a large, stealth-like craft capable of hovering in absolute silence before hurtling away at colossal speeds? This would surely account for the undeniable presence of highly unusual craft at places like the now world-famous Area 51 in Nevada, a short hop from Lockheed's Skunk Works in California. Of course, this view does not take into account the assertions of those who maintain that such advances in aerospace technology are the results of reverse engineering projects conducted on captured alien spacecraft, assertions that we examined later in this book. The presence of strange objects and lights in the sky is merely the tip of a very large iceberg. When venturing into the field of ufology, we quickly encounter some extremely bizarre events which demand a much wider context of inquiry than that briefly discussed above. Indeed, the idea of a genuine extraterrestrial presence on Earth is only one of a host of theories that have been put forward over the years to account for human encounters with anomalous phenomena. While many researchers are of the opinion that the ETH is a theory that best fits the evidence thus far accumulated, the public remains largely unaware of the alternatives, which might, in the long run, offer a greater insight into what is happening in these cases. This, it seems to me, is the central problem of ufology, the assumption of an extraterrestrial origin for sightings of unusual objects, which has been consistently reinforced by the very same media that seeks to deride the people who do report such sightings, has resulted in a set of preconceptions that can only obscure the underlying nature of the phenomenon. My own position is one of tentative acceptance that there is indeed something very strange happening, something that defies explanation in terms of our current scientific paradigms. In the pages that follow, I will present a number of cases which I hope will provide a representative sample of the wider field of ufology, and which will illustrate not only the dangers of accepting certain cases at face value, but also the inevitability of ignoring these cases that strongly imply the presence of a genuine and profound mystery. The first half of this book will include cases that fall into the famous categories invented by J. Allen Hynek, close encounters of the first to fourth kinds. Therefore, I shall present 7 further sections, which will include cases that illustrate additional important aspects of ufology that have arisen in the years since the Second World War. I hope that by the end of the book, the reader will agree with me that the field of ufology represents a puzzle of potentially colossal implications, one that demands serious study rather than the closed-minded approach of the skeptics who maintain that there is absolutely nothing here worth dwelling on. Surely, in view of our rapidly expanding knowledge of the universe and its myriad wonders, such a negative viewpoint belongs to yesterday. As Abraham Lincoln said in somewhat different circumstances, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate for the stormy present. Then that's it. That's everything that wraps up the introduction to the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that real quick here. As you can see, Alan Baker, it looks like he's presenting 2 sides when it comes to the future chapters of this book. Number 1 is him talking about the many ways that a lot of quote-unquote UFO sightings can easily be explained away. I mean, he dedicated multiple paragraphs to that, something showcasing even along the lines of planets, misidentified real aircraft, or aircraft that is still experimental, stuff that hasn't even been released just yet. And then number 2 is the idea that these really are UFOs. These are stuff that are unidentifiable, like they are absolutely just beyond anything else, and he's going to examine those in some of those future chapters. And as he hinted at towards the end, he's going to dedicate a big portion of them to encounters of the first to fourth kinds. I imagine that he's going to have a skeptic eye to this as well when it comes to these chapters, so we'll see what he says at that point. Hopefully, he does seem pretty open towards the end as well when it comes to taking a look and even challenging skeptics with regards to them staying stuck on their mindset that no, it's not real. Like in this case, he does seem to be open to accepting that yes, there can be actual UFOs and actual extraterrestrials too. Fascinating stuff. But let me know what you guys think about this book, UFO Sightings by Alan Baker, and what your thoughts are as far as the future chapters. I'll be doing some of these periodically, and then that way you'll be able to see the next chapters coming soon. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.